All right, so welcome to Parenting Little Ones. Today's session is going to be called Feed Me. It's on nutrition and baby-led weaning. So today, if you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function down in the bottom of your screen there. You can type your questions in and I'll read them out loud for our panelists. So I see a question over here in the chat. Yes, today the only people that will be on our screen are our panelists and myself, simply because we're going to be recording this session and putting it up on our YouTube. So we value your anonymity, so you can feel free to ask all the questions that you like. Let's see. So first, we talked about the Q&A function. So my name is Jenny Gechter, and I am the early literacy librarian for Pikes Peak Library District at the East Library. I've been working with little ones for about 17 years now. My degree is in elementary ed, and my master is in library science. Let's see. And so first, let's start with, we'll go around the room and I'll have them introduce themselves. We'll start with Amanda.
Okay, hi, my name is Amanda Cute. I am an occupational therapist and I work for the Resource Exchange. So at the Resource Exchange, we do early intervention for kids birth to 3 years old. And we do see a lot of kids that need some help with feeding. So that can range from just learning to eat, to figuring out the progression of food, to having some sensory issues with feeding. So we see a wide range and help a lot of kids through feeding.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Let's go next. Erin, would you like to introduce yourself and your organization, please?
Yeah, hi, my name's Erin. I am a registered dietitian and I work for WIC. I've been a dietitian for about 7 years now, and I've been with WIC for 2 years. WIC stands for Women, Infant, and Children. And for those of you who might not know what WIC is, we're a federally funded program that provides supplemental foods, nutrition education, and breastfeeding support, along with other referrals to community programs. Participation in WIC is based on 3 different eligibility criteria, including income, like residential, like where you live, and then also categories. So we serve pregnant women, postpartum women, and then children through the age of 5. So every WIC appointment will offer nutrition education. And then we also offer monthly food benefits that come onto an EBT card. And the foods that we provide are intended to promote healthy growth and development through the reproductive and developing ages. So we do have 3 different clinics throughout El Paso County. We have one at the Garden of the Gods Citizen Service Center. We have one in the Southeast region. And then we also have one at the new El Paso County Public Health Building in the city of Fountain. So we are offering most services remotely right now. And yeah, I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
All right, and we have Karen. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Karen, and I am a dietitian as well. And I work at UC Health, but I have a specialty in pediatric nutrition. And so I work with kids at our outpatient office, and inpatient I do mostly adults, but I also cover our neonatal intensive care unit. So I've been a dietitian for about 10 years, and I've been at Memorial Central for the bulk of that time, and was doing pediatrics for most of it there. So I love my job. I'm looking forward to answering questions.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everybody that after this session is over, probably tomorrow, I'll send out a survey link for what you thought of tonight's session. And when you complete that survey, that's how you get entered in to win the drawing. We have a $50 gift card for tonight's event for our drawing winner to either Target, King Soopers, Walmart, or Barnes & Noble. And then just by showing up tonight and participating in the survey, you also get entered into the Kiwi Co-Crate grand prize drawing, and that thing is really awesome. So I really encourage you all to put your questions in the chat and participate and fill out the survey. So, all right, to get us started, looks like we don't have any questions quite yet, but does anybody have anything that they would like to, do any of our panelists have anything that you'd like to start the conversation off with? I'm curious. So I don't have little ones of my own at home. I work with them in a professional capacity, but I don't have children at home. So I'm curious what baby-led weaning is. Would somebody like to jump in and help me out with that?
Erin,
Yeah, I can say a little bit. So baby-led weaning is it's sort of like a method of feeding your baby. It's probably better to refer to it more so as like baby-led feeding rather than baby-led weaning. There's not really any weaning going on with baby-led weaning. It's more so an introduction to solid foods. Kind of the more conventional way of introducing solid foods to babies is starting with purees. So, baby rice cereal is generally like the first food that is offered to a baby. And then kind of moving from there to pureed vegetables, pureed fruits, and then kind of doing a gradual transition to like more chunky textures, and then eventually leading to finger foods and small enough textures that babies can feed themselves with their hands. So kind of the concept behind baby-led weaning is sort of skipping that whole puree phase where the parent feeds the child. With baby-led weaning, it's basically allowing the child to feed themselves from the very beginning. Babies feed themselves when they breastfeed from their mom. Babies feed themselves when they drink out of a bottle. And so it's sort of just kind of following along that same path of babies know how to feed themselves. And there doesn't have to be that like huge parent involvement of like kind of spoon feeding a baby. So it really encompasses like offering healthy foods to babies. It really promotes healthy family meal times. And it also kind of just creates this really intuitive eating pattern for the baby. It's allowing the baby to know how much they want to eat, whether or not they want to eat, how much, how quickly they want to eat. So it sort of is kind of starting out like going straight into solid foods. So obviously there are some safety concerns around it. But it just kind of allows like a greater exposure to different like flavors, different textures, different temperatures. It really enhances like fine motor skills because it allows some like hand-eye coordination. It leads to more adventurous eaters. Babies who are exposed to a lot more foods early on tend to be a little bit more adventurous when they get a little bit older. So I guess I could probably keep going, but I could stop there and see if any of the other panelists have some more input or if any questions have spurred up so far.
You did great, Erin. I will say, just from the occupational therapy standpoint of it, I kind of like a combination of baby-led weaning and you doing some spoon feeding. So if parents are really like the baby-led weaning approach and it works well for their child, you can still do purees or mashed up stuff. They have dipper spoons that they have a really nice short handle with a nice short little flat spoon that babies can grip onto really easy and dip it themselves into things like yogurt or mashed up guacamole or puree. So they're still getting a lot of that good lip closure that they need on a spoon for part of that early development, but they're doing it themselves, which also falls under the concept of baby-led weaning. So I thought, Erin's answer was fantastic. I just like to add that, we don't completely want to skip the puree stage or learning to use our lips off of a spoon, because that's important for learning how to drink out of a straw and those kind of skills that you need. So they sell these really awesome dipper spoons now that little ones can easily grasp onto because they have really short handles and a nice short little spoon that's flat and they can dip and, kind of work that way too with some of those more puree type textures.
And I'd like to kind of piggyback onto what Amanda just said, because one of the things that I have talked to our speech therapists and also our occupational therapists about is the squeezy pouches when really young kids, because that development that Amanda was just talking about with being able to form their lips over a spoon to pull food off of it. And from my understanding, Amanda, you can correct me, is that doesn't when you have those squeezy pouches and they're just sucking from them, you don't develop that skill. And so that's just something for parents of especially really young babies. If you are using those squeezy pouches, I mean, sometimes it's okay for the kid to do that themselves and just suck it out, but it also is a good idea to put some, especially with the younger ones that are just starting to eat, put some of that on a spoon and hold the spoon up, or have the child hold the spoon up so they can develop those lip skills of how to eat off the spoon.
And one concept with baby-led weaning that I do like is you give stick shapes of things. You might cut carrots into stick shapes. You might cut little pieces of celery, and the baby is picking that up and they're doing a lot of good jaw strengthening by munching on that. But you can also use those stick shapes of vegetables, you know, zucchini, whatever you're cutting, you know, all these healthy, wonderful foods, but then have them dip that in a puree too. So then they have this nice stick shape that they can also be using that as a spoon and a dip, and they're getting some nice jaw strengthening from that, nice tongue movement, but also learning to use their lips to kind of clear off whatever dip they're dipping in.
So it sounds like, Erin, what you were speaking about a little bit also would help with, like we were talking about healthy eating at the table, family dining and things like that, helping with some healthy decision making for themselves, letting them know they're full.
Yeah, so kind of like when kind of the more conventional pattern of, you know, the parent sitting here with a bowl of purees and spoon feeding in each bite to a baby. The baby doesn't really have a whole lot of control on whether or not the parents have no way of knowing, is the baby full? Do they even want to eat? So sometimes it's easy for parents to sort of like force their child to eat because they're just kind of keeping spoon feeding the baby. But with the baby-led weaning, it sort of allows the baby to have that freedom to say, I'm going to eat as much as I want and then be done. And that's like a really good, it's a really good kind of philosophy to carry over into even like toddler eating and young children eating. And it's kind of this philosophy known as, my mind went completely blank. The division of responsibility. So kind of childhood eating kind of is split up into two different responsibilities. There's the parent role in feeding, and then there's the child role in feeding. So the parent, the role of the parent in eating is to provide a healthy meal for the child. So provide healthy foods and offer a safe and healthy space and environment for the child to eat. But ultimately, it's up to the child to determine whether or not they want to eat, what to eat, and how much they want to eat. So if the parent is offering regular set meals and snacks kind of throughout the day, they're doing their job, but then it's up to the child to decide whether or not they want to eat. And there are some obviously special circumstances with this, if there's any like sort of health or growth concerns, but ultimately just have like allowing children to have that freedom, you know, have that control over what they're eating will kind of lead into overall healthy eating habits as like a young child.
Yeah, and when children are forced to eat, you know, for example, you have to eat everything on your plate, which is the way a lot of us were raised, that can lead to unhealthy habits later on where they are always eating everything on their plate, even if they're not hungry. And of course, we are dealing with, you know, issues with obesity in this country, and that has a lot of other health implications. And so when children learn to eat intuitively, where they eat when they're, you know, they eat what they're hungry for, from a perspective of amount that they're eating, and their parents are providing, like Erin said, healthy choices at the table, then that really helps them to learn how to eat and how to listen to their body later on, which is super important.
Yeah, I feel like I've done a lot. I've had to do a lot of unlearning through my adulthood based on that exact philosophy, how I was raised. Okay, what else? Do you have any like words of wisdom? Like this has all been really great information so far, but do you have any words of wisdom and stuff for dining as a family? Or I guess the thing that comes to mind is like, if for very rushed families, do you have any words of wisdom for that?
One of the things that I've got 3 kids at home. I'm aged 8 to 17. So everybody's and athletics and who knows, everyone's very busy. One of the things that I have discovered is helpful for my family, I know it's helpful for a lot of other families, is freezer meals. If you've got the time or if you've got the space in your freezer, you can just use Ziploc bags. You can use like silicone bags. You can use glass containers, but it's a way, there's tons of recipes online for freezer meals, and a lot of them contain lots of vegetables, and you chop, you maybe take a couple of hours on a day that's not so busy for your family, whatever day of the week that might be. And you can prepare 5, 6, 7 meals all at once in a relatively short period of time, like maybe an hour, maybe 2. You could probably get a lot of meals done in 2 hours, where you're just chopping up vegetables and putting in the chicken and, whatever, the beans, whatever it is you're using for that meal. And then what you do is you can take that out the night before and stick it in the fridge, and then throw it into a crock pot or into an Instant Pot. And you have a meal that has a lot, fresh, healthy ingredients. And you didn't really, on the day, the Wednesday when you have 10 activities after school for the 5 different kids, you know that when you get home, you're going to have a healthy meal all ready to go. And that can make a huge difference, because it stops well, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? I don't know. I guess we'll go through the drive-through. And it helps to make better choices. And there's a lot of variety of meals available. So that's something that can really help busy families to make sure that they're offering those healthy choices and not being stressed out by it.
Awesome. Well, I do see we have our first question in the chat, but before we do that, I forgot to do the poll. This is for our guests, so we can kind of get a gauge on how old your little ones at home are. So I'll launch that, and I'll give about 20 seconds to answer that. Three, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm going to share those results. Can you see them? All right, so it looks like we've got pregnant and expecting 0 to 12 month, 2 1-year-olds, and then a 5-year-old. So, all right, well, if that helps our panelists, there we go. Okay, so I'll read the first question. My baby just turned 15 months and she really likes nursing. I don't remember it being this hard with my first child to lessen the time I nursed her throughout the day. I guess my question is there anything I can do? Do I just let her cry it out when I know she wants to be nursed? I've tried giving her food, but sometimes she's just not having it.
Yeah, I would say at that age, it's not a nutrition thing for her. So it's probably more just a comfort thing. Generally, like the nighttime feeds are the hardest to get rid of. So I would just say try to kind of take it like day by day, step by step. One suggestion I always like to give is like try to find the feeding session or the nursing session where she's kind of like the least interested. It might be in the middle of the day or like late afternoon, and try to kind of cut that one out. So if she's consistently nursing at a certain time, try to eliminate that feeding and then kind of work on another one. There's like distraction methods, you can offer, like if she's going to try to nurse, maybe like start playing a game or give her a toy, or even give her like a sippy cup or a cup to drink water out of or something like that, and try to just really distract her out of that nursing session, and then try to work down from there. I would say that unless you ultimately like absolutely are insisting that she weans or doesn't nurse anymore, then there's no harm in her continuing to nurse. But yeah, it can be a lot for sure. So I would just say try to pick the one nursing session that's like the most where she's kind of not so into it, or maybe like easily distracted from, and try to work down from there.
And I would add too, when you said sometimes you offer food and she's just not having it. One thing that was helpful for me, and that is helpful for a lot of the families that I work with, is trying to establish some really nice routine around each of your meals. So I know, we're busy, so it can't be at the exact same time every day, but we like to try to implement like a start and an end to a meal. So, it might be you guys sing a little song or, whatever your family does before a meal. You might go wash your hands and then go sit at the table, and that's your start to the meal. You might sing a song or say a prayer, and that's your start to a meal, so that she knows, okay, every time we wash our hands and we go sit down and we sing this song, that means the meal is starting. And then you do your meal. And then at the end of the meal, even though she's only 15 months, you could still, have her help do something to kind of say the meal is done. So that could be, bringing your dishes to the sink, throwing your plate in the trash, putting all your food that you didn't eat into an all done bowl, and that's her into the meal. So just creating a nice routine around each meal so that she knows, okay, like I know what to expect for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, the more it becomes like a nice social routine for you guys, it just helps little ones, sit longer and engage longer in the actual meal process. And then we also like to, I'm not sure what you're giving her to drink, but we try to do like meal first. So, you offer your water cup and maybe your milk cup or whatever. And then, if she wants to breastfeed afterwards, that's fine. But it trying to let that happen at the end of the meal. So it's not, something she's thinking about during a meal.
I think a couple of you had mentioned that you were on one of our panels that was about picky eaters. What might you suggest for parents who are concerned about the nutrition intake of their child if they're choosing the foods? If you're providing the foods and they're set out in front, but the child's making the decisions to eat or to not eat those foods, what would you say to a parent that was concerned about the child getting the right nutritional content?
One of the things that we, sorry, I just didn't start that very well. Erin might be better off to start here. But the important thing is that for most kids, and Erin mentioned earlier that there are always exceptions, and there are certain children that if they kind of cut out foods and then they continue to cut out more foods without adding new foods back in, we start to get concerned. And that would be a time when you might want to talk to your pediatrician about going to, seeing if you can get OT involved for sensory issues or speech to see if there's, certain issues going on in their mouth that are making it difficult for them to eat, or sensory issues that make it challenging for them to eat certain foods. But for the most part, children, especially young toddlers, will go through what we call food jags, which is where they kind of get on a rut and they will only eat certain foods, but then they'll go for a little bit where they'll only eat other certain foods, and then they'll go back and forth in a zigzag kind of fashion where they choose some foods and then they reject those foods and pick up new foods. And that's perfectly normal toddler behavior. That's them kind of expressing themselves. That's them learning how to eat and learning what they like and what they don't like. And all of that is perfectly normal. But like I said, what's not normal is a child who, especially a child who used to eat a lot, starts to only eat certain things and drop things without adding new foods back in. And that's where we start to be more concerned that they're not going to get the nutrition they need. If you have a child, the best way is to think about food is a child should be eating at each meal 1 tablespoon of food, of 3 different foods for every year of age. And that's for young children. So if you have a 1-year-old, for a meal, 1 tablespoon of 3 different foods on their plate is adequate for them, as long as they're getting 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks a day. And then when they're 2, they should be doing 2 tablespoons of food. If you measure that out, it's not very much food. And so I think a lot of times we serve children large portions of food, adult size portions or half size portions. And for toddlers, that's really more food than we would expect them to need to eat. And so keeping that 1 tablespoon, 3 foods, 1 tablespoon of each in mind can really help parents to be less worried about, is my child eating enough? And again, most children, if they don't eat well 1 meal, will typically eat better the next meal or the next day. And again, that doesn't apply to every child, but most children will do that. And so the big concerns are, is your child gaining weight properly? Is their weight kind of following the curve? Are they developing normally? Are they doing all the things that they're supposed to do for their age? And those two things are really the most important, because if they're doing those things, they're probably getting enough nutrition.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly what Karen said, and to like if the parent is offering like a variety of foods, that's going to help the child be more likely to take more foods in. So like sometimes it can take 10 to 15 times of offering one food to a child before they decide they want to try to eat it. So that's why it's the parent's job to provide healthy, balanced meals with a variety of foods. So even if it's just putting like one piece of broccoli on the plate or like one pea next to them, like if they don't take it that first time you offer it, that's probably normal. Not every child's going to try something new to them the very first time. It could take 5, 10, 15, 20 times of like seeing that broccoli before they're like, hey, I've seen this broccoli. That's familiar to me. I'm going to try it. So kind of creating that familiarity with food and creating like if they're, just kind of cycling through all the vegetables and offering a whole variety of vegetables, that's going to make them more likely to try those foods. So yeah, making sure that there's, healthy protein, healthy fruits and veggies and whole grains at every meal. That's going to just allow, more exposure to those foods and increase the likelihood that they're going to eventually try it. And yeah, what Karen said, I think it's easy for parents to have this expectation of that kids need to eat so much food on their plate. And I think that's where parents tend to get a little bit worried, like, oh, my child isn't finishing their food. It's like, well, how much food are you giving them? And more times than not, they're trying to offer their child way more than they actually need. So it sometimes really comes as a surprise to parents when they actually realize how little their babies and children need. So yeah, having those appropriate portion sizes is really important.
One other tip to go along with that from something that we do a lot as OTs is, say your child hasn't been interested in broccoli and you really want them to eat broccoli. One thing that parents tend to do, and I did this too, is, you put a lot of broccoli on the little kid's plate. So try just doing little pieces. So if you're doing broccoli, instead of offering like a large amount, we always say, just give a little bit, like 2 or 3 little pieces, because if you're having a sensory reason, for some reason you don't like the color of broccoli or it looks funny, but if you give it in a tiny amount, so you're just offering 2 or 3 little pieces to the brain, that doesn't seem so overwhelming to the little child who's trying to learn how to eat broccoli. It seems more like, oh, I can handle 2 little pieces of broccoli on my plate. That's no big deal. But gosh, if you give me a whole plop of it, which is sometimes, I didn't think to do that, but it really does make a difference. If you have another thing I suggest for little kids, I saw we have a lot of younger toddlers in this group, is doing like the little section plates that have the little dividers. A lot of them have 5 different sections. Put in 3 sections, 3 things that the kids really like that are healthy and nutritious. And then in the 2 other sections, put 2 things that either you haven't introduced yet or you're still working on, like the broccoli. And that way, when they look at their plate, they see little portions of some things that they're really used to and they're comfortable with, and some things that we're still working on. And it doesn't seem quite as overwhelming, and they seem more adventurous that way in trying the new things.
And also,
so just a little tip.
Also encouraging them with, instead of saying, oh, I don't like Brussels sprouts either, talking about, hey, what color is this? What flavor is this? What do you think it's going to taste like? Do you think it's going to be sweet? Do you think it's going to be salty? And, especially 2 to 3-year-olds, they really love answering questions about what color something is, what shape something is. And when you get them excited about that stuff, they're going to be more likely to want to eat those things, or at least put them in their mouth. And one thing that I used to be part of the feeding clinic team through Children's Hospital. And one of the things that we talked about a lot was something called a no thank you bite, where you, and Amanda kind of touched on this already, let them have a small piece of something and let them try it. But if they don't like it, or if it makes them gag or anything like that, allow the kids to take it out of their mouth and put it either on a napkin or to the side of their plate or something, and don't react to it. Don't say, ew, that's gross, or you better swallow that, or anything like that. If a child feels safe putting something in their mouth, they're more likely to put things in their mouth. So if they know they're going to have to chew it up and swallow it if they put it in their mouth, they may not be as willing to try things. And so giving them that opportunity to, if it really bothers them, if they have texture issues and that the top of broccoli is kind of weird for them, they put it in their mouth, but then it's okay for them to take it out. Just don't make a big deal of it, because that's going to turn it into a game. If you like, ew, that's gross, they're like, sweet, look what I just did. I just made mom freak out and scream, and that's what I'm going to do again. So don't make a big deal of it, but just let them take it out and say, thank you for trying it. And that helps to create these healthy eating habits.
All right, we've got another question in the chat here, or in the Q&A. It says, our baby just turned 1. She's been teething and has started to need night feeding again. When having a bad teething day, she will not eat much throughout the day. So we don't want to starve her and give her milk at night, and not give her milk at night, but she can wake up to 5 times a night, and it really wears on us. And then we have to rewean her after the teeth poke through to sleep throughout the night. This has happened already 3 times. What can we do to stop this routine?
I'm going through that personally right now, I will say. Honestly, those night, how oh, 1, okay. Again, it comes down to probably more of a habitual thing and a comfort thing. And so, if she's teething and not eating a whole lot, I'm just going to kind of be blunt. She's not going to starve if she doesn't eat at night. She will be okay if she has a couple of days of low milk intake and then some other days of more milk intake. And so again, it's probably just a comfort thing, and she's probably just waking up because she's in pain rather than hungry. And so, again, it's probably just kind of trying to break that habit of her waking up and thinking she's going to eat. So if you have a partner that can go in and try to soothe her back to sleep, that would be best. Because if mom's in there, she knows mom's going to be in there and she's going to be fed. So if you have a partner that can go in there and help soothe her back to sleep, or try some other calming techniques to kind of make her more comfortable at night without nursing her, because that definitely is a huge challenge.
And I would say, just continuing, I talked about the importance of the routine earlier. I would say just like during the day, even though you said she's not wanting to eat a lot, which can happen if, their mouth is feeling funny, or there's pain, or, getting teeth is a big deal for a little baby. But just trying to keep the meal routines consistent and just do the best you can with that, so that way when those teeth do break through and she comes out of that, you can kind of easily go right back into your routine, so that won't be forgotten at that point. But we feel you. I mean, we've all with kids have been through it, and it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. So hang in there, it will get better. They get big so fast, and you'll look back on it like, oh my gosh, because my youngest now is 4, but I still remember those days of, it's tough. So we feel you. So, hopefully they'll get through it soon.
Another thing, like you've mentioned, like if her teeth are really hurting her and she's not wanting to eat, you can always provide like some like different like cold foods, soft foods, things that kind of feel good on her teeth during the day. Like maybe even like a hard food that she can kind of gnaw on. So kind of maybe offering some foods that might feel good to eat, whether it's like a popsicle or some cold yogurt or something like that. So that way she's kind of still getting some nutrition during the day, and it actually might feel good on her little gums.
All right, we just had another one pop up. The question is, with the night feedings, would it be okay to let baby cry it out?
If that's the method you want to do, I think it would be okay. I think it's just a personal preference. There are a number of different night weaning, sleep training methods. And with my daughter, we let her cry it out and she was sleep trained in like 3 days. And with my son, we've decided not to take that route, and it's been a lot harder, I will say. So it's honestly, I think, a personal preference. And kind of, if that's what you want to do, she could get used to it.
So I've got a question. When you were talking about things that the baby could drink, you mentioned milk and water as two options. My nephew would be so mad at me for telling this story, but when he was little, he drank a lot of juice and then ended up losing a lot of his teeth. How much juice is okay? I'm curious about this.
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. For kids under 5, we recommend no more than 4 ounces of juice per day. And then for children older than 5, we recommend 8 ounces of juice per day. So a lot of kids under 5 get more juice than that. And one of the ways that you can help to reduce the amount of juice that your child is drinking is by slowly watering it down. A lot of kids wouldn't accept, half water, half juice if they've been used to drinking just straight up juice for a while, but you can put 80% juice and, a little bit of water on top and then slowly water that down. We strongly recommend only doing water between meals and snacks. You can do milk with meals and with snacks, or for the infants and young kids, doing milk as milk or a bottle or formula as a snack. But we really want kids to only get water between meals and snacks, because a lot of kids can fill up on juice or fill up on milk, and then they don't get the other nutrients they need. Or for kids that don't do a great job of monitoring their own intake, they can get a lot of extra calories from the juice and from the milk, and that can cause them to gain extra weight, which just makes it harder for their body to do things.
And the type of cup can really make a big difference as far as like oral health goes too. You mentioned drinking a lot of juice and having some teeth problems. For kids over we recommend about 14 months that you transition to an open cup only. Drinking out of a bottle or a sippy cup, even beyond a year, can really have some detrimental effects to the teeth. And so, and it kind of just, same thing with like oral health development. It kind of like, if you're sucking out of a bottle or even a sippy cup with like a hard nipple on it or like a spout, that can affect like your how your mouth is developing. And then it can affect like how the fluid is hitting your mouth too, like your teeth. And so, try to work on like transitioning to an open cup at right about like the 1 year to 14 months. And like, even for babies who are kind of starting the introduction to solid foods, like you can start giving them a cup as early as you start giving them solid foods. You can try to give them like a little mini like shot glass size cup and give them a little tiny cup to start playing with and try to practice drinking out of at that time. And then so that way, by the time they do turn 1 year, they're able to drink out of an open cup. And then, what Karen said about the water, that can also, drinking juice kind of throughout the day can, like between meals, for example, because there's different enzymes that get produced when you're eating food. And so if you're just drinking juice between meals, like those enzymes aren't created. And so that can affect like decay in your mouth too, if you're just drinking juice between meals.
So a little tip to piggyback off of Erin is, so we try to just go straight from a bottle to a straw cup. We try to avoid sippy cups now in the therapy world, if at all possible. And kids, once they know how to close their lips to a spoon or to a hard munchable or something and pull the food off, that's the beginning skill set of being able to put your lips to a straw and suck through a straw. So we usually say, you start food around 6 months, which is around the time that kids are sitting up, because you want that nice trunk control to be able to use your mouth to eat and also to digest your food. So it's around 6 months or when kids are sitting up. And shortly after, they're able to do purees, or if you're doing baby-led weaning, able to get their lip closure and suck something off. You can introduce a straw cup really soon after that. So we have a lot of 7 and 8 month olds drinking really well out of a straw. So just, I saw there were some expecting moms and of babies. And so, try it out. There's nothing wrong with a sippy cup for a little bit, but a straw just helps use your mouth in a more effective way. And it also helps with speech development. So we kind of say, if you can forego a sippy cup early on, great, just go straight to a straw. So just a little tip.
There's a follow-up comment in the chat here. She says, thank you. I think this was about the previous question. She says, thank you. I feel bad because she's teething. I don't want to stop nursing. Just don't want to spend 80% of my day nursing. Yes, I hear that. All right. Well, any other suggestions or things that you wish you had known like that while we're waiting for our next question to pop up?
I just think a neat tip from an oral motor standpoint is for the moms that are expecting and for the young babies, lots of that nice oral motor play when they're babies really helps the baby get their mouth ready for taking in food. So I learned the hard way because my first baby never put anything in his mouth. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm lucky. I don't have to worry about this. But really, you need babies to, really use their mouths when they're really little, putting their fingers in, and then safe toys, because all of that putting stuff in their mouth is getting their mouth set up for when you first put the first food in. So it's just neat little thing about development.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have thought of that as a positive thing, but now that you say it like that.
Yep, getting their tongue ready to move food over, getting their jaw strong, working their gag back. So yeah, it's all part of development.
And if I can just put a plug in for Amanda and her team over at TRE, just because a lot of parents a lot of parents can be a little worried about their kids when they're doing normal things, but it's also okay to use that parent brain that you have. If your kid if you really feel like they're not doing something that they should be doing, or if your pediatrician has expressed some concern, TRE is a fantastic resource that is available to all families that have kids that need that support up to age 3. And the earlier that if you have a child who has, for example, sensory issues and they won't eat certain types of food, and they're getting that more narrow, they're kind of narrowing down what they are eating, and they're having sensory issues and they're having speech issues. TRE is a really fantastic resource. I've worked with some of those folks over there, some of the OTs that they've got over there previously with the feeding clinic, and they're just, the earlier if your child is having issues, the earlier they get help, the better off it's going to be for them later on, and they'll have fewer issues later on. So I just wanted to put that plug in because it's really a fantastic resource that's available just for our community.
Yep, and it's really easy to refer to us. Your doctor can make a referral, or even you can make a self-referral as a parent. So you would just call the resource exchange and just say that, you have concerns with feeding or concerns with my child not sitting up yet, or whatever the concern in early development. And then we do an evaluation, and we take insurance, and if you don't have insurance, it's covered by the state all the way up until you're 3. So that's, and we come to your home. So it's a really nice way to get some help. I have 3 kids. 2 of the 3 of mine needed just some little boost of development. And so I accessed the resource exchange too, and it was great.
And you said, so other services are available through the Resource Exchange. And I know I've had some of your colleagues and other parenting little ones, but can you tell everybody maybe what some of those other areas?
Oh, sure. So we have physical therapists that would help with any of the gross motor development. So early gross motor skills like crawling or learning to walk. So we have physical therapists, we have occupational therapists that help with a gamut of things from fine motor development to feeding to sensory processing. So we have OTs, we have speech language pathologists that help with language and communication. And that doesn't usually come in until I would say 15 to 18 months. We get a lot of kids that need some help or a little boost with communication. And then we also have developmental interventionists that are trained to help with play, to help with social situations, any kind of trauma or anxieties that kids may have had, the parenting piece to work with parents on, maybe their child is having some behaviors and just working through that. So we have a lot of nice services that help the whole range of development.
Oh, there we go. We do have another question in the chat. Thank you for sharing that, Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Our next question says, my 15-month-old is not interested in drinking cow's milk. I've tried various cups, straws, temperatures many times. He will eat cheese or yogurt, but I'm worried that he's not getting enough calcium. What can I try?
Soy milk would be a good alternative as far as the calcium goes. Soy milk would be a good source of calcium. If he is eating cheese and yogurt, that would be fine. A lot of the milk alternatives are not comparable as far as nutrition to cow's milk. So there's a variety of nut milks and oat milks, and those don't quite have the right amount of protein and fat needed for the, a 1-year-old. So soy milk would probably be the best alternative as far as nutrition goes. Almond milk would have a good amount of calcium, but probably not enough protein or fat. There's some non-dairy sources of calcium too, though. So, the dairy would be the cheese and yogurt. So if they're eating that, but leafy greens like spinach, kale, or broccoli, almonds, pinto beans, soy products like tofu. So there are some other non-dairy sources of calcium out there if they're not doing too much dairy.
I'm curious about, because we've talked a lot about vegetables and then fruits a bit. What about things like introducing your young ones to protein sources like meats, or what's an appropriate age to start doing that?
So at 6 months is definitely appropriate. It kind of depends. So if your baby is exclusively breastfeeding, then you definitely want to introduce protein foods at 6 months. Babies are born with a store of iron, but at that 6-month mark is when that iron store sort of gets depleted. And so breast milk isn't going to provide enough iron that they need. So the protein foods are a really great source of iron and zinc, which is really important for brain development and growth and whatnot. You can, obviously they have the pureed baby meats for the meats, but you can also serve meats to your baby. You can cut strips of moist, tender meat into little finger size sticks. You can do ground meats, shredded meats. You can, you puree meats into sauces and things like that. But you definitely do want to introduce those protein foods at the 6-month mark. If meat's not in your diet, you can do eggs or beans as a protein and iron source too.
And something to keep in mind when we talk about traditional progression of foods, when we talk about purees, here in the US, we have this sort of traditional of doing grains first and vegetables and fruits and meats being the last thing. But if you look at culturally across the world, meats are often the first food that is introduced to babies at that kind of 6-month mark. So it's not, you don't have to introduce cereal first, and then a vegetable. And again, with baby-led weaning, you wouldn't be doing it that way. But that's just something for parents, especially our expecting moms, to know, is that you don't have to go in any particular order. And like Erin mentioned, if you're breastfeeding, introducing meats early is good, or protein source is good, because you get that iron and the zinc and the protein in that your baby needs.
And Erin and Karen, I do have a question that I get a lot. What is the latest research on peanut butter and when to introduce like the nut butters and stuff? Because my pediatrician said 6 months, since we don't have a history of allergies, but is that still the latest on that?
Yep.
Yeah, there's no need. All allergen foods should be introduced before a year. The top allergen foods would be the peanuts or peanut butter, soy, dairy,
Tree nuts.
Tree nuts, eggs, fish. Fish or shellfish. We absolutely recommend starting those sooner. Obviously, if there's a pretty significant family history, you would want to take a little bit more caution, but there's no need to withhold the allergen foods. We just recommend for those big allergens to kind of space them out a couple, like a day or 2 to 3, space them out apart, so that if there is an allergic reaction, you can sort of pinpoint it. And that kind of goes with all new foods. So when you are introducing new foods to your baby, just try to space them out a day or so, just so that you can tell if there's an allergic reaction.
And another one is strawberries, that a lot of kids can react to. Something to be said about melons, because in the adult world, we tend to see a lot of melon allergies, and it's because they had a quote unquote allergic reaction as a baby. Babies don't tolerate melons super, super well. And so they tend to get like butt rashes and diarrhea and stuff with melon. And it doesn't necessarily indicate an allergy. But you just might want to, if you have a baby, like a 6 months a year old baby that does eat melon and has that kind of reaction, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an allergic reaction, but I would just wait, until they're over a year before they try it again.
I worked with a child once who had an allergy to one of the enzymes in hard cheeses, so they could have like cheddar, but Parmesan they had an allergic reaction to. How common is something like that?
I wouldn't say it's super common, but there are allergies, anything that has a protein in it, and a lot of things, pretty much any food has some small amount of protein. I've seen kids with garlic allergies, onion allergies, and we've actually had an adult patient at the hospital with a anaphylactic onion allergy. And so, you wouldn't think of an onion being a normal thing. So, and that's why one of the reasons why they discuss having, introducing foods a few days apart. So if a baby does react to something, you do know what they're reacting to. Cinnamon is something else that people react to. And so like if you're gonna add, when I made baby food, and so I added spices in, but I added those in one at a time as well, just because I didn't want to, introduce, meat with all these different spices in it and have the child react and not know what they were reacting to. So it's possible for kids to react, or adults even, to react to a whole variety of foods. And so I wouldn't say that the cheese enzyme allergy is particularly common, but it doesn't surprise me too much that someone has a reaction to it.
So that's a really good idea about separating I don't know that I would have thought about that, adding the spices, like making sure that they have separation there. That's great advice. Well, we've got about 5 more minutes. If anybody has any last questions to pop in the chat, now is your chance. And then for our panelists, any last words of wisdom or anything like that?
I would just say that introduction to solid foods is supposed to be fun. So don't make it like stressful, or, don't make it like a whole thing. It should be fun. It should be messy. So, I had a family once say that they didn't like feeding their baby because it was too much of a mess. And that's kind of the reality of it, is allowing your baby to get messy when you're feeding them is super important for, a number of reasons, but like, they're feeling the food, they're smelling it, they're feeling it, they're getting to taste it. So that's one just part of the process. So just kind of know that it's going to be messy, and that's part of the fun. They have these special like bib things nowadays that look like a full-on apron with sleeves that you can get. They have little like splash mats that you can put beneath the high chair. But I just get my son undressed down to the diaper when it's dinner time, because I know that it's just going to be a mess, and that's just part of it. And it's the fun of it. And so, and just kind of trying to go into it with pretty low expectations, because, it could change so quickly. And so just knowing that, kind of being open and flexible and kind of just allowing that to happen, because these days go by quick. And so,
Yeah, Erin stole mine. I was going to say, let the kids get messy. That's super important. You can also just buy like $1 shower curtain, plastic shower curtain, put it under their high chair. I just forgot what I was going to say. As parents, it's easy to stress out. So just, try to remember some of the things that we talked about today, but remember, like Erin said earlier, it is the child's job to eat. And it is your job as a parent to provide, 3 meals, 2 to 3 snacks per day, and to provide those healthy options for your kids. And so if they are not eating, then one of the best things that you can do as a parent is to remove yourself from that and from the guilt from that. And know that for the most part, kids will eat more the next day. And that if they go some days without eating as much, it's going to be okay. So just keep that in mind and just keep your chin up, because especially feeding toddlers can be a challenge. So just know that you're doing okay.
Yep. And just keep offering, if they don't like one food one day, don't check it off and say, my child doesn't like this. Just, my child didn't try that today, but tomorrow they may. So you just have to keep putting it on their plate. And again, in very small amounts. That way you're not wasting a lot of food, and that way you're making it easy for them to be brave and adventurous and try that next food. So, good luck. And if you do, I don't know if you can share our emails, Jenny, but if you think of questions that we didn't answer, you're welcome to email me. I can try to answer them if you think of something down the road.
I will share that if I have your individual permissions.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And with what Amanda just said too, oh my goodness, my brain just is completely fried. It's 8:30. What did you just say, Amanda?
I said, don't throw that out. Trying different things.
I have kids that are 8, 9, 10, 15 years old coming into my office, later on with food issues, obesity issues, underweight issues. And their parents will say they don't like tomatoes. And I say, well, when's the last time they had a tomato? And they'll say, well, they tried them when they were 2. And so that's something, just like what Amanda said, always continue to offer foods and continue to have them try foods. And they don't have to try the whole thing. They just have to try a bite, but it's going to make a difference. The more they try foods when they're young, the more variety of foods they will eat later on. Even if they don't like them then, they're going to be more willing to try things later.
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank our panelists. This was a great discussion. I learned a lot of things tonight I had no idea about, so I appreciate that. Tomorrow I will send out the survey, and I will include all of your email addresses on that for our participants tonight. And I just want to thank you again, and I hope you all have a really great evening. We'll see you next. And next time. I was going to write that down. Don't forget to go to the PPLD website to check out the next Parenting 101 session. All right. Have a great night, guys.
Bye. Thank you.